Hey y'all, it's Rick here with Uncommon Communion. And I gotta say this, y'all, I really wanted to write for Ash Thursday. I had a small post on Ash Wednesday that was quite honestly mostly things from last year. We did talk about Psalm 49, and I really wanted to share with you in writing what I am going to be focusing on for this particular Lenten journey. I mentioned earlier, it is a busy week. And this week, more than ever, because I have 3 trainings that I led already this week, I got 2 more days, tomorrow and the next day. I really need to gain strength from some rest. I'm also fighting a cold. And one of the things that I've always been, that is important for me, especially during Lent, but during any season really, is that by keeping consistent with this day to day, because I respect and appreciate the supporters, the subscribers, each and every one of you. I want to be realistic and reasonable. So days like today where I need to get to bed early to feel better, I'm going to record, keep it simple, keep it short, and always hope that the next day, tomorrow, which would be for Ash Friday, I can write and introduce some of the things, the themes, and the threads the pathways that we'll be following on this Lenten journey 2026. But let's begin, as we always begin, by recognizing, realizing, celebrating, and affirming that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of the more and each other. So it's kind of a cool day today, Ash Wednesday. Did you see it? U2, which is my all-time favorite band. I think I've mentioned that here before. They surprised everyone apparently and dropped an EP. I think it's 6 songs, and it's called Days of Ashes. And the songs all have a political bent to them. And they put videos out, and it was really a very concerted effort. This was felt spontaneous from our perspective. Out of the blue, this comes out, but certainly they had planned it and crafted this. And, I don't know if they kept it under wraps, but I didn't know it until I saw on my Spotify today that there it was. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to share some of that because music is going to be a big part of the Lenten journey here at Uncommon Communion. And I got some very specific songs in a playlist I'm going to share with you. And I'll talk more about that when I put that into writing. I'm also very, very struck and taken and challenged by the lining up from day one of Ramadan and Lent as something really important to pay attention to. So one of the things that I will be doing here in Uncommon Communion and doing in my own personal reflection is taking a look at Ramadan. Like, what is it? What is it about? Looking at Islam and also looking at sorry, I did not mean to sneeze here. I do not have a mute button and I can't edit this without starting over. So I very much apologize for that, y'all. Um, this is like, live here. Um, so, um, again, I want to explore that here and also explore Sufi mysticism, which is a branch of, or a sort of a sect or a mindset and a practice within Islam of mysticism. And I found a really good reader for that I'll be sharing from as well. Also, I have a book that I want to also excerpt from, and I'll tell you about that, about a different way to fast and a different theme and idea for Lent. So I introduced those to you here verbally today, and very much hope to write those for you for Ash Friday. All right, y'all. Psalm 50. We are 1/3 of the way through the Psalms, recorded and talked about a Psalm every day. So far, I am on track for my goal, which is to get through 150 Psalms in 150 days. Here we are, 150 or 50. And it's kind of a unique one because, to my knowledge, it is the first one that we've encountered where God speaks. So we're going to hear an I of for God, right? Now, obviously, this is the psalmist speaking on by behalf of God, but it's very much like a prophet. And I'm struck by the synchronicity, and again, the surprise synchronicity between this psalm and the theme that we're going to hear in the reading, not tomorrow, Thursday, when you're getting this, but Friday. The first reading in the lectionary cycle takes this theme in this psalm and extends it and makes it, I think, very instructive and inspiring for us during our own Lenten journey. So I'm not going to read the whole psalm. I just want to read a few verses that are really at the heart of the psalm, because again, this one is a fairly long one. So it begins out in a way that we kind of expect, right? Grandfather, our great spirit and creator, has spoken from sunrise to sunset. He calls out all who walk Mother Earth. Creator's light shines out from strong Mountain Zion, giving her the fullness of beauty. Our creator is coming to us. He will not be silent. A devouring fire goes before him, and a thunderstorm surrounds him. So right up here up front, we get these natural images, which is going to be a theme that is extended upon when the perspective shifts. So after verse 6, it shifts in verse 7, where it is said, My people, I am the great spirit, your creator. Open your ears and I will speak, O tribes of wrestles with creator Israel. I will sit in the council house and speak against your broken ways. I do not speak against you for the ceremonial sacrifices or the burnt offerings that you bring me day after day. And just a little aside here, y'all, we in the Christian world, and I think even probably for Muslims, and perhaps even for today's Jews, have no appreciation really for how important sacrifice, blood sacrifice was to the early Israelites of the time of David and even in the time of Jesus. I mean, we get, glimpses of this where it says Jesus and his family came to the temple and they only could afford pigeons, two turtle doves, right? They weren't going to release those birds. They were going to sacrifice them, right? So it was a huge, huge important part. But here in the psalm, God says this: I have no need for more bulls from your herds or goats from your flocks, for all the woodland animals belong to me and the herds of bison on 1,000 hills. I know the winged ones who soar in the mountains and every creature that creeps across the plains. They all belong to me. If I were hungry, would I tell you? For the world and everything in it is mine. Do I need to eat the meat of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Give me gifts that show how thankful you are, and keep the sacred promises you have made to the one above us all. Call out to me in the day of trouble, that I will rescue you, and you will honor me. And then it pivots to talk from God's perspective what God will do to the wicked ones, the bad-hearted ones, right? First of all, at first reading, this reminds me to some extent of, the great Matthew 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats, and God, dividing people, very specifically speaking about behaviors. Also, this is very much an echo of Job, right? If you've ever read the book of Job, God speaks a lot in that book to Job, and a lot of it has to do with the natural world. God is saying, were you there when I made this? And were you there? And it's a beautiful book, beautiful imagery, but this psalm has echoes of that. The reason I think it is quite a nice and important synchronicity for us, that just not randomly, but we are on this journey and the psalm lines up with where we are in the calendar, is what we hear in the prophet Isaiah 58. And we'll hear this in the Catholic liturgy, the lectionary liturgy for Friday. And God says this: God is talking about the people and calling out to God and fasting and sacrifice. And this is what God says. God says, do you call this a fast? A day that this is, actually, I'm going to rewind it back a little bit here. So it talks about God, people sacrificing and, giving God this. And God says, you call this a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? This rather is the fasting the sacrifice that I wish, releasing those bound unjustly, untying the thongs of the yoke, setting free the oppressed, breaking every yoke, sharing your bread with the hungry, clothing the oppressed and the homeless, clothing the naked when you see them, and not turning your back on your own. And then the famous line, then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your wound shall quickly be healed, right? So very similar in what we hear in the Psalms. Again, this is God speaking through the prophet Isaiah, but we get this also elsewhere in Amos and other places where God is saying, I don't want, and in the Psalm, God is saying, I don't need you to give me these animals, right? They're mine. I made them. I created them. And besides, I'm not hungry, which is kind of seems a little silly for us to, have to have God tell us that, but, here we are, right? Um, but I think the Isaiah says what God really wants, the kind of sacrifice that God truly desires is justice, helping others, freeing others, sharing your bread, clothing the naked, and so forth. And again, clear echoes of what Jesus says in Matthew 25 about what we are called to do. So I'll wrap it up here, again, just by saying thank you for making this day on the Lenten journey, making my reflection and my comments a part of that. And would love to hear your comments. I have not really been hearing much from listeners or viewers, and really would love to. So please put something in the comments. Say hello. Let me know what you think. Let me know how it's going for you in this beginning days of Lent. I want to close with just a very short little prayer. It's really more of a reflection. This comes from the Ignatian Book of Days, and these are actually from the spiritual exercises that St. Ignatius himself is suggesting that we do. And he says, when we look at Jesus on the cross, we can ask these questions. What have I done for Christ? What am I doing for Christ? And what ought I do for Christ? And we are to talk like Jesus, talk with Jesus as if with a friend. And again, I think those are great questions. In this spring cleaning, if you will, this turning our hearts back, that is Lent 2026. Maybe those are things we can do. What have I done for the more? What am I doing for Christ the more? And what ought I do for Christ the more? All right, y'all, thanks for being here. Again, I hope to write for Friday. Blessing and good. Be bold, be well, hold fast, y'all.